Greetings, this is Philip Morgan, and as you can probably tell from the congested sound, I'm stuck at home with a nasty head cold, so I figured that while I was here, I would go ahead and continue working on a couple of projects. Basically, with this head cold, I'm pretty much out of action right now, and it's kind of difficult for me to concentrate on things. I've always followed an old adage where if you can't work on anything else, then work on yourself. And that's very much what I'm doing today. The previous project that I was working on, which was a pentagram, just a second here, let me pull it out. I carry it with me everywhere, practicing with it. And I'm finding that the pentagram has an unexpected benefit. It's not only good for working with, of course, the elemental forces and such, but it's also very good for finding, kind of like finding a way, finding a path. And so it's been very beneficial for that. I'm still working on it, still continuing this project. I'm deciding what to do in terms of coloring. Do I just put a dot of color at each point? Or do I work on coloring each stick, for example? And do I have, pardon me a second, do I have a full, does the stick remain one full color? Or do I do graduated coloration from one elemental color to another, and so forth? So I'm still deciding what to do about that. But in my magic, for some time now, for the past couple of years, I've been shifting away from using the pentagram to using the hexagram instead. Now, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with the pentagram. If you are interested in working with the four elements, if you want to grasp the lightning, if you want to produce change in your life, this is definitely the tool to work with. But on the other hand, for me, my emphasis in my magical studies, pardon me a second, and I got a little battery warning. All right, and I got the power supply plugged in, so we're ready to go on. I was talking about the difference between using the pentagram and how I was kind of graduating over to the hexagram. I talked about the fact that the pentagram is still a very useful tool, but for my personal practice, I wanted something a bit more sophisticated, I guess is one way you could put it. Now, the interesting thing is that when you're working with the hexagram, or at least when I'm working with it, I'm not giving up the pentagram. In fact, there is a pentagram, two pentagrams hidden in the hexagram. For example, you can see just placing that here, if it would stay put, and if that would stay put. But by placing it here, you can see, in effect, the hidden pentagram that's in the hexagram. So, for example, if I wanted to trace an upright pentagram, I would go from here to here, and then I would follow what I call the hidden pathway to here, another hidden pathway across to here, and then up to here. And that's one of the things I like about the hexagram, is the idea of these, in effect, hidden pathways. And the hidden pathways function as a kind of gateway to the other world that we glimpse through the use of the pentagram. So some of the things that are overt, or actually covert, pardon me, in the pentagram are overt here in the hexagram if you make proper use of them. I almost forgot to mention, there is also an inverted pentagram that is found in the hexagram, just like the upright, and I'm sure you're smart enough to guess how that works as well. So I've got effectively two pentagrams hidden in this hexagram, one for ascension or development, and the other for descension or manifestation. The inverted pentagram is not necessarily evil, but instead it points to manifestation and how the four elements cycle through to create something that is real and visible in our world. But for me, the hexagram, with the combination of the two pentagrams and the way it's used, represents balance. 6 is 5, consists of 5 plus 1. That's me in making this hexagram work. So the inherent strife or conflict of the pentagram is resolved here in the hexagram, but that resolution is up to moi. And so that's one of the reasons I like to work with the hexagram, is because of this recognition of the inherent conflict, which is resolved through personal effort. That's why I like to say that the hexagram is more sophisticated than the pentagram, and that is not a criticism of the pentagram. It's just simply a different approach. So at this point, I'm in a little bit of a quandary. Now, with the pentagram, when I was gluing it together, I could just simply glue a point, glue here, and then glue another point. And so even with the points glued, I was still able to come in with a toothpick and add some glue into someplace like here, for example. That's going to be more problematic with this, because as you can see, there are a lot of glue points. So glue here, and then glue here, and then glue here, and then glue here would seem to be an approach. But then when I'm trying to separate it out to glue here and to glue here, I can't because it's already glued here. But in assembling this together, you can see that it's warped, bowed somewhat by the tension of these sticks held together. Essentially, I could take these clamps off and it would probably stay together like this. It wouldn't handle stress very well. So what I can probably do, and I think what I am going to do, at least for this prototype here, is I'll just simply go ahead and glue the points. Just glue each one of the points, and then the tension here will help hold these into place so that the triangles won't shift around in there. And then if necessary, I could probably be able to flex it just enough to get these apart, to where I can come in with a toothpick with some glue to glue that together and make it even stronger. But I'm really looking forward to using this thing, because this is something you can really grasp and get a hold of and use in different ways. And I'm thinking perhaps even different ways of holding it. I can't use both hands because I'm holding the camera, but different ways that you grasp it could also in effect form finger mudras, very similar to that type of effect. So this is going to be a lot of fun and very interesting to experiment and play around with. So in the creation of this, oh, by the way, this is now glued. I did what I decided to do earlier, which is simply to glue each point in turn and let the tension of the interlaced triangles hold them together here without gluing the inside points. But just to show you, give you some idea of where my head is at here in putting this together, is where I was first sketching out the concept and working with the idea of the hidden pathways. If anybody's familiar with the unicursal hexagram, you'll know about these pathways already. But that's one of the things I liked about creating the solid frame, was because in effect there were these hidden pathways, which for me are like a key or access to a greater power in effect. And also the color assignments. For this, I may very well just settle for doing a dot of color at each of the points, and then maybe consider blending colors into dots at each of the internal points. I don't know yet. This still has to be worked out, because the nature of the triangles is fairly straightforward. We understand what's going on there. But the inner points themselves forming a secondary or reflective hexagram, that's a matter for investigation later. The first thing to do is to get the thing built. Oh yes, and something I forgot to talk about is what I call the lightning flash. You may be familiar, if you know about the Tree of Life, you may be familiar with that idea, but we've got a descent of power from here to here to here to here, like so. So it's boom, 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 boom. Sorry, I traced it wrong the first time. But that also can be a path for development or ascension. And of course, there is a mirror form of that, all of which would be very fruitful, will be very fruitful grounds for exploration and discovery. And having a lot of artistic training, graphic arts training, I decided that for something this complex, I better model this sucker before I start building it to figure out the interlace. This was actually the hardest part, was figuring out the interlace of the two triangles, and well, not only interlacing them together, but also in effect gluing them together. And so what I wound up doing was going on the web and actually looking up Celtic interlace versions of the hexagram in order to work out the interlace and where to glue, different gluing points. Okay, I'm at my favorite little corner cafe, having some coffee and a breakfast croissant. Happy Father's Day to everyone. And I let the glue dry overnight, and so the hexagram is looking pretty good here. And I was right, the tension, I just glued the points, each point, and the tension from the interleave is holding the triangles in place. In fact, I kind of squeezed on it a little bit and they were still staying firm, so I'm going, okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In other words, I don't need to glue it any further. And I'm in the process of editing together what will be the final video for the hexagram spellstar. I'm also finding out that interesting ideas are essentially occurring to me. For example, being able to place the fingers through the opening here points to interesting possibilities. Let's say, for example, I'm responding to someone who's requesting, like, health or aid or strength or whatever. I can go ahead and type a reply using the spellstar in turn to help empower the response. Or I could even use it to look through as kind of a magical lens, so to speak. So just simply constructing this simple object is suggesting to me all kinds of ideas. And another thing also is that at times I get impatient with people who feel they have to get just the right items that are often usually pricey and expensive. And a big lesson we need to learn is that magic is everywhere and it is in everything. And so with just a few simple sticks, lollipop sticks or tongue depressor sticks like these that you buy in the craft stores, and some paint, you can create a very powerful magical tool.